Now it's not such a price game anymore. Now it's finally a game of how can I best serve you versus how can I best sell you? I hope all this is making sense, listeners. Welcome to the Sales Made Simple podcast. This podcast is dedicated to helping overwhelmed outdoor living professionals, landscapers, and hardscapers just like you increase your closing rate to over 75% without doubling your workload so you can build a seven-figure business that doesn't need you. I'm your host, Joshua Gillow. Let's dig in. Budget timing. When is the right time to bring budget up in your conversation with a new customer? This is a critical question. Listeners, when do you bring it up first? Is it right away to get it out of the way to make sure Mrs. Jones has the money in order to pay you? Is it middle of the conversation once you've built a little bit of a relationship? Is it late in the conversation once you've built great relationship and getting a much better idea of what she really truly needs, wants, and desires? Honestly, think about it. Do you have a system or process in order to know exactly when that conversation is supposed to happen? When talking about budget is the most ideal thing to do and not something you just got to get through because you need to know a number so you're not wasting your time with people who can't afford you. I've seen and had the blessing here of training hundreds of contractors, outdoor living, landscape, and hardscape contractors around the United States. And when I listen to what they do first, there's a very strong agreement that most contractors want to either get to budget early or not talk about it at all. That's usually one of the two scenarios. They either want to lead with it in the beginning, ask a couple of questions, and then simply ask, what's your budget for a project like this? And take whatever they give. Most likely the client says, I don't know. And then nobody knows anything that's going on. And everybody designs in the dark, which means designs with no budget in place, and wonders why the industry average is 20 to 30% closing rate. And others, they just don't talk about it at all. So when you're listening out there, dig deep into your heart and figure out, where are you with this conversation around budget? Is it something you actually enjoy? Is it something you're good at? Or is it something that you dread? Be honest with yourself. Is it something you'd rather never talk about because it's a big embarrassing subject that either you're usually off or the clients usually say it's too low or too high or whatever it might be, and it's just a conversation you try to avoid? Are you trying to avoid that conversation? Because the answer to that question is going to direct you on what you need to do. Because if you're trying to avoid the conversation of budget, that's why your closing rates are low. Setting expectations around budget is a key. And if you decide to put the budget up front, 2-3 questions, what's your budget? I'll come out and take a look at the project for you. That is what every other contractor is doing that they're calling. And when they feel that every contractor coming out is giving them the same basic quote unquote sales experience, you're forcing your client to now look at numbers as the only differentiator between you and the other two bids they're getting. So then it makes perfect sense for Mrs. Jones to pick the lowest cost because in her mind, all the things are equal. Now, I offer you and I challenge you to think differently if you're one of those people who talk about budget right away up front. Budget is something, and we've done the research in this for years now, budget is something that is best served deeper in the conversation. We have found that it makes a lot more sense, a lot more relationship building sense to start off building rapport, getting deeper into what the homeowners truly want, need, and desire, going through an entire process before you get to talking about budget. This way, when you finally do get to budget, deeper in the conversation, you'll have what we call value stack them. They will understand what value you and your company offer that differentiates you from every other company they're talking to. And not just by a little bit, by a lot. By having a great value stack in place, the clients can see from their own perspective what's in it for them. Because if this entire sales conversation with your clients is about you and how great you are and how great the products are that you have and how shiny your trucks are and how great your teams are and all that, if that's all it's about, your clients feel that. And I hate to tell you, they don't like it. What they want is they want to work with people that understand them, that ask questions to unlock what's truly needed for them in their backyard, not the stuff you want to sell them. So when it comes to asking about budget, we need to build rapport. We need to value stack so that they understand the value that you're going to bring in your company that's different than everybody else's, so that they can make a great decision. And sidebar here, most of the time they'll pay more for that. Because as you hear me say all the time, we have to get rid of the uncertainty in the sales process. The client is spending potentially 6+ figures on an outdoor living project. The last thing they want to do is get into a relationship with a company or a person that is unsure what they're doing. If they feel any uncertainty in you or your team, if they feel any uncertainty in your ideas or your delivery of those ideas, and they don't see that you and your company can deliver those ideas at or above an expectation, you're going to be fighting an uphill battle constantly. So by tucking the conversation of budget later in the conversation, you are allowing your customers to get to know you and how you think. And if you're actually asking great questions, how's your listening skills? All of those things. You get to build a case for why you're the better choice. But if you drop budget up front, what happens oftentimes, not every time, but oftentimes, clients' minds get stuck right there. If you lead with, hey, Mrs. Jones, thanks for reaching out. So what are you looking for me to build for you? I'd like to have a new patio, new seating wall, and a new fire pit. Got it. So how much money you got to spend on that project? I think I've got about $25,000 to $30,000, no more. Okay, I'll be out tomorrow. We'll take a look. Yep. That's how most do it. And then they get out there tomorrow and look, and they try to think they're going to figure out a way to make it work within that budget, and they're going to put the proposal together and a design together and all those kinds of things, and the two other guys are doing it too. Mrs. Jones then looks at it and says, well, I had 3 similar experiences, and this guy here is about $7,000 cheaper, so I'm going to go with him. And the other 2 get washed away. And that happens over and over. Eventually, you're not in business. And I say all of that because imagine if you did a little differently. Imagine if you took your time on that call with Mrs. Jones and you went deeper than just the basics. And you actually got to know them deeper, got into the emotional drivers behind what it takes for them to move forward with this project, when we future pace and say things like, what does the space have to look and feel like to know it was an absolute success? When you start digging into the emotional drivers, you unlock a different level within each of your clients. Now, I know this might sound crazy, and you're like, we're designers, we're outdoor living professionals, we're not here doing psychology or therapy on people, and that's not what this is. This is simply being a good detective. Being a good detective that can unpack and unpeel the onion is what we call it, and to dig deeper into the client's true needs, wants, and desires. And once you have that door open, once you've developed the skill set in order to do that, your clients have no choice but to know that you're obviously different. And most people that are looking to do a large project are looking for someone different, someone they don't have to deal with the uncertainty of a contractor, but more the certainty of a professional. Professionals, your doctors, your lawyers, they have been taught in school how to do these things. Outdoor living professionals, we've learned it on the streets. Not many of us have gone to school to learn communication. Those other professionals have. And newsflash, guys, a lot of us are working for doctors and lawyers on a very standard basis, a very normal basis. So if we're showing up and we sound like contractors, you wonder why they treat you like a contractor. If you show up and sound like a professional, understand how to communicate, how to see it from their perspective, all of a sudden the game changes. Now it's not such a price game anymore. Now it's finally a game of how can I best serve you versus how can I best sell you? I hope all this is making sense, listeners. Because, if you learn how to do this, and when you ask and talk about budget deeper in the conversation after you understand their true needs, wants, and desires, the game changes. Because now it's not just a numbers game. They're not stuck on those numbers in the very beginning thinking like, oh, he said X to Y for this project. And then you get to the house and it's completely different. And then you're the guy that was 20 to 30,000 and it really has at least 50,000 or more to do what they wanted, but you just thought you'd give them what they wanted up front and you lost the opportunity. Setting budget expectations is one of the most critical things you can learn how to do to increase your closing rates, to be able to serve more people. So if that's something you want help with, that's what we do here at Yes Express. We have a step-by-step process that we teach outdoor living, landscape, and hardscape companies. They integrate it directly into their sales process. It becomes their sales process, step by step. And once they have that, their closing rates go through the roof. We see it over and over and over again. So if you need help with that, take a look in the show notes. You'll see the book a call link. Book a call. I'd love to listen to what you've got going on in your company right now and to teach you how to take that budget conversation, push it much deeper in your conversation with your clients so that you can build that rapport. You can build those value stacks in place so that you can not just show up and offer a design and a client and eventually, hopefully, a build, but you can actually get in there and help change their lives. Serve that client instead of trying to sell them and be able to not just serve that one client, but open up the doors to tons more. So thanks for listening, guys. See you next week.